Hi, you're listening to the Fresh Start podcast, and this is episode number 29. Hello, hello. Welcome to the Fresh Start podcast. This is Marcia Ramirez, and Stacey Wynn is out this week, so it's just me. You just get me today. But I just have a few things to tell you before we get to our guest. The first thing I want to tell you is that we just had an amazing retreat this weekend, a women's retreat up at beautiful Pinuel Ridge Retreat Center up north of Nashville. The God of My Girlfriend's retreat, Awakening the Feminine Divine was our topic. And man, it was such an awesome weekend with some really amazing women. And we're going to do some more of these different topics. But, you know, when women get together, I'm telling you, something special happens, something magical happens every time. And this was no exception. So thanks to all the women that came. And if this sounds like something you'd be interested in joining us, maybe on the next one, you should go to godofmygirlfriendsministries.org and go to the retreats tab, keep an eye out, or even just sign up for our email list so you'll know when the next one is. We would love to have you join us on the next one because they're just really special times. Good food, good wine, good conversation, lots of fun. We have some great guests coming up that we've already recorded. I've just been kind of behind. I've been so busy with getting the retreat ready. I haven't been able to stay up on this podcast as much as I should. So sorry about that. We are still here. In a couple of weeks, I'm first going to tell you about what we've got coming up in a couple of weeks. We interviewed some really amazing women. Katie Douglas and Brittany Towson. They wrote this book. Can you see it? It's called Love Your Neighbor, How Psychology Can Enliven Faith and Transform Community. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. Go grab it if you can. It's on Amazon, all the places. And our conversation with them was amazing. So y'all don't miss this. This is coming up in a couple of weeks. This week, though, we have a really special guest. We have Lauren Pinkston with us this week, and she is actually running for governor of the state of Tennessee. Now, you'll hear me talk about, I was sort of a fangirl of Lauren's on Instagram. I started following her because I really loved her voice. I loved what she had to say. It was always measured. It was always thoughtful and yet bold, all at the same time. That's a hard thing to like balance, I think. But Lauren somehow managed to do it. And then I noticed that she was really absent for a while from Instagram. And then suddenly she was back and she was running for governor. And she's going to tell you about why she took that break, what she was doing in that break, and what made her decide to run for governor. And she's running as an independent. And I think that's really cool because she's not beholden to either the Democrat Party or the Republican Party and trying to conform what she thinks is right to what they want her to do. Because we all know sometimes those two parties seem like they've both become too extreme for a lot of us these days. So Lauren is a breath of fresh air, in my opinion. And I think you guys are going to really, really love this conversation that we had with her. So before I bring her on, I just want to tell you a little bit about Lauren. Lauren is a wife, a mother of four, and seventh generation Tennessean, and she's running for governor to restore integrity, accountability, and common sense to state government. Now, doesn't that sound refreshing? Rooted in rural Tennessee and shaped by global experience, she has built a career advancing opportunity by supporting human trafficking survivors, strengthening the workforce, and leading mission-driven organizations. Lauren is running to put Tennesseans first by improving education, supporting working families, and ensuring government serves people, not politics. Again, very refreshing. She believes Tennessee's best days are ahead, and when leaders listen and they lead with courage, they deliver real results. So we're going to have all her stuff in the show notes, but I have to tell you, I don't think I have ever donated to a campaign in my life, and I donated to hers because I really believe that she's special. So y'all have to check her out. And without further ado, we're just going to go right into our awesome conversation with Lauren Pinkston. Welcome, Lauren Pinkston, to the Fresh Start Podcast. We are thrilled that you're joining us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for making time for me, and thanks for what you guys do.
Well, we try.
We all have to do something. We all have to step.
We're trying to be a light in the world, Miss Lauren. I tell you, sometimes it's hard, but no, we're great. As I was telling you earlier, I was following you on Instagram for a while, and I really loved your voice in the world and things that you had to say. And then you sort of disappeared, and I was like, "Where'd Lauren go?" And then you were back. And you were running for governor of the state of Tennessee. And I'm like, my first thought was, how brave, how bold, go girl. I mean, I just was so excited to see it. And so with us being a Fresh Start podcast and wanting people to think outside the box, we just knew you would be a really good person to have on the podcast. So thank you. And we just want you to start by telling a little bit about yourself. We read your bio, but just tell us a little bit about yourself and what your life is like these days, and a little bit about your background. You did grow up in Tennessee, correct?
Yeah, 7 generations back, and I'm a rural girl. Grew up, driving a 66 Ford Bronco through my parents' pasture, and through speed on the column, and driving 4-wheelers everywhere, and rolling yards, and doing all the fun things that happen in rural parts of Tennessee. I lived in Memphis. We've already talked about my time abroad. I've got 4 kiddos. They were born on 3 continents, so we've dealt a lot with United States Immigration Services, and just lived, I feel like, several lifetimes in 38 years. But what started to become really clear was that after I moved back to Tennessee and started trying to advocate for positive legislation for my neighbors here, there was zero accountability, and no one really cared to speak with their constituents who disagreed with them. And it was very clear that federal mandates and a federal party was in control of our great state. And that became a justice issue for me, an issue that felt like my neighbors were defeated and feeling frustrated. And I, having lived in a communist country, having spent a lot of time in areas of the world where there were dictators, I couldn't sleep anymore at night, knowing that we had to do something here if we were going to continue to be a beacon of hope and democracy to the world. So that time that I was kind of offline, I was really wrestling it out with God. Asking God to please make me good at baking sourdough or something that looks like a good Southern woman.
That's a skill, girl.
And God refused. And so I really did try to do any other job but this, because it is a huge risk to take on for my kids. It's a huge risk to take on for my family. My husband is a lovely Enneagram 9 who hates conflict. I am an 8, so sign me up for conflict all day long.
I'm a 9.
You're a great pair. You guys are a great pair then. And we figured out how to make that work, beautifully in our marriage. But when I told Gavin that I was thinking about this, he said, and he like paused, and then he looked at my eyes and he was like, "You're serious?" I'm serious. And thankfully, years of great marriage therapy had prepared him for that moment to be very supportive and walk through that decision tree with me. And so anyways, we can talk more about it, but that's what I was doing, was really wrestling it out with God and trying to do anything but this. But it was very clear that this moment was designed for me to step into, and I have not looked back, and I have felt the most incredible sense of peace ever since we launched the campaign.
That's really remarkable.
Yeah, now, that's awesome.
Tell us a little bit more, Lauren, about your decision to be independent and kind of how that feels for you.
Yeah, the truth about me is, and you're going to hear people say this for the next 9 months, that I'm a Democrat in disguise or I'm a Republican in disguise. And that is something that parties use in deeply red or deeply blue states across the country, where people have been kind of trained to think in this binary way of you have to be a Republican or you have to be a Democrat. Like there's no other way to be. And the truth is that the majority of us actually are in the middle on a lot of issues, not soft on issues, but perhaps we're fiscally conservative and socially liberal. Perhaps we really care deeply about school choice, and we want to see gun laws make our communities safer. And so when I go into every room, I ask the question, how many of you would describe yourself as a person of faith? And almost everyone in the room will raise their hands. And then I say, how many of you feel that one party owns all of your values, within that party? And no one raises their hand. And so we have raised our children to be nuanced thinkers. We have raised the next generation to hold complexities really well. And none of that thinking works in a binary system where you have to be red or blue. And the reality is that kind of the federal party system has overtaken our thoughts on a lot of these issues, and it has left a lot of us frustrated, disoriented, apathetic, confused, feeling like there's nothing that we can do. And this campaign is to gather all of those individuals who are grateful for the sacrifices that have been made so that we can vote, who are grateful for the communities that they live in and want to see them thrive, to say, you don't have to fit into a box anymore that is not made for you. We can be people of reason, and we can show that we actually are the majority of people in this state. We just have to find each other, and we have to speak up together.
Yeah, and mobilize. It's interesting that you're talking about that dualistic thinking, binary thinking, and we talk about that in the faith world, and a lot of our guests come from that space in a religious context of not falling into binary thinking, and I struggle with this too. In that space is you can't make someone hop out of that binary thought process. Like you can't do that. So tell me, I'm just interested, since you mentioned that, what's your experience in a room of people, and some are willing to enter into that more complex and kind of critical thinking, and some are not?
It really is about creating safe spaces for people and asking them good questions. So the spaces and I've been practicing this in person and online for years, and it has become such a joy to talk to people who think differently than me. Number one, because I genuinely am curious. And I think that our posture as facilitators of these conversations is critical, right? We have to come in not with the intent to change someone's mind, but with the intent to learn something. And so when we enter into conversations with people who we know may fall very differently than we do on a political or on a religious standpoint, it is, what questions can I ask to unlock some kind of new learning for me, or some kind of new worldview that I haven't considered? Now, you have to be able to have the space and the capacity, to be curious about that. And so not everyone is in a place with that type of cognitive privilege. I get that. But yeah, it really is around facilitating a safe space for dialogue. And so, and then the next step is asking questions that will unlock someone's story. Because we are all a product of our raising. We are all a product of our environment. And this is how, one by one, a culture is formed, because we have this shared experience around our worldview, or around the things that we've seen. And unless we are purposefully interacting with people, then we lose that opportunity to even collectively, create the culture that we're looking for. And as social media has continued to expand, and as online platforms have allowed us to just find our affinity groups and lock in there, we have really lost that tensile strength of this art of civil discourse and of this dialogue. And those are muscles that we desperately need to build back. So we're getting ready to do that with this campaign. We're about to launch our mobilization plan, where we have designed an hour and a half of questions that you don't have to be a trained facilitator in this. All you have to have is a living room or some tables at a coffee shop or a library where you can meet with folks, and we will give you everything you need, a quick one-page digital download and videos from me that ask the questions. And I mean, we've even got, the countdown screen so that everyone knows what to expect. And so as long as you are willing to gather 10, 15, 20 people in a room, have a conversation. We're calling them conscious conversations, but that's really the bread and butter of this campaign, is getting people in the room together and to look each other in the eyes and humanize each other, in this moment. And there's something magical that happens in every single room that I'm in, where people are so energized because they've done something courageous.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful.
And the humanization that you're talking about, I mean, it seems like there is so much dehumanization in the political world, in their language when they're talking about on both sides, right? And so I love that. I love that you're trying to bring humanity back into the issues, because that really is what it's about. And I'm curious, I've been following you. I know you've been going around and you've been having little meetings, town halls, whatever you want to call them, listening sessions, whatever you want to call them. What are the concerns that you're hearing most consistently from the people that you're meeting with?
Yeah, every state's different, but for Tennessee, the questions that are top of mind for people are absolutely the economy, right? The cost of buying a home. And for the next generation, they're afraid that they're going to be 40 years old before they're going to be able to buy a starter home. And in my community, the cost of housing has gone up 104%, and the income has gone up around 2%, right? So this is a real issue across the state. We've had a lot of people move in, and we have not done a good job of creating, I would say, good boundaries for the investors that have been able to dump millions of dollars into our communities, but for their own interest and not the interest of the infrastructure that those new housing complexes require. And so, and then for Tennessee, again, specifically, it's our school voucher system. I hear this is across the state. Rural counties are very frustrated, even urban areas. And shockingly, what I think people would be surprised to hear is that I would say 98% of the families who I speak with who have their children in private schools say that even if they're utilizing the voucher system that we have, that is somewhat new here in Tennessee, that they would give it up in a heartbeat so that they're not draining resources from the public school system.
Wow.
So people are really unhappy with the money that has been dumped into a program that seems to clearly have enriched the rich and has not had positive test scores and positive academic outcomes for those who are utilizing the vouchers either.
And my dad was a school teacher. He was a college professor and in Arkansas. And that's where I grew up. And, I have such a heart for educators. I know you were previously at Lipscomb, correct?
That's right. I taught in the College of Business at Lipscomb. I taught business ethics and entrepreneurship, but I also started my career in education as a fourth grade teacher in public schools. So
I just, have a heart for teachers because, I saw my dad, he didn't work 8 to 5. He came home and he was working all night long grading papers or taking phone calls from kids. And I just feel like they totally get overlooked in so many areas of politics. But I'm just curious if you could just, for people that are listening, can you explain that voucher system? They may not know what we're talking about, just in a nutshell, what that is and how it's hurting like the public school systems, because it is.
Yeah. So the narrative, there has been a national narrative around school choice that has been pushed, saying that public schools are failing or that they're trying to indoctrinate our children and that families deserve choices. Now, I don't disagree. Let me say, I don't disagree that the impacts of No Child Left Behind have been really devastating, and they have created classrooms across the country that have become like cookie cutters. And teachers get into this field because they love the creativity and they love the opportunity to design their classes, their lessons, their lectures. And so this has definitely had some negative impacts on our communities. The voucher system is one that has really been pushed in order to promote that ideology of school choice. Now, we saw similar conversations at the moment of desegregation, in the South with the promotion of Christian education. And this was a moment of white flight that really, again, put a damper on public schools and was the expansion of our private school networks. I need to also say that I have had my children in private education at different points based off of their needs. And so this is not me saying that private schools should not exist. It is not me saying that we don't need a variety of school options. I didn't mean to become the poster child of school choice, but I have had my kids in Montessori schools, international schools, therapeutic schools, online schools, public schools, and we have homeschooled for a semester. I flunked out of that. We had to. We were living, and I was pregnant, and it was the whole thing. But
you flunked out of homeschool.
I did not make it past a semester. Not for me. So I have a lot of respect for what's going on. But Tennessee specifically, we have one of the largest private school. We're one of the largest private school populations per capita in the country. We have one of the largest homeschooling populations in the country per capita. And that puts a lot of pressure on our public schools because it creates this drain of resources. And it eliminates the diversity of students that we have in a classroom. And as a former classroom teacher, I can tell you that the more diverse my classrooms were, the more stabilized they were, the more exciting they were, and just the easier it was. My classroom management systems were. So, So as of now, you can. That was a long prelude. No one wanted that, I don't think. No. Free to cut all of that, but I do want to just. I'll put a pin in this by saying that you can receive a voucher through the state of Tennessee right now. That, as it has been reported, actually is a higher cost to taxpayers than what the state is actually investing in students per capita in public schools. And so you can receive, or the private school that you're attending can receive almost $8,000 per student who qualifies for one of these vouchers. And over 50% of those vouchers are going to individuals who do not meet a low tax bracket income.
Yeah. Mm. So it's putting money into the private schools, but it's really harming the money going into the public schools.
Right. I mean, if that money exists, then isn't it the government's duty, right, to use taxpayer dollars to fund public education? That is a lawsuit that our current governor is under right now, with 3 public school parents who have sued him to say that it is the duty of the government to fund public schools. And so I'm watching the lawsuit very closely because it will set the precedent for how we decide this across the nation.
Great. Thanks for explaining that. Because I don't know if that's going on in other states, but maybe people don't understand what that all is about.
Yeah, it's definitely happened in Texas. It's happening in other states, and Texas has seen catastrophic outcomes for their public schools because of it. And all of the education researchers are gave the same warnings for Tennessee. And I actually called private school administrators and presidents before the bill was passed last year to ask, do you want this? And they said, no, it's going to completely disrupt our system. And so even the private schools didn't want it.
Yeah. What's your journey looking like right now in the world of the independent party and this really doubled down 2-party system of ours? And what are you seeing out there in that space? What's encouraging you right now?
Well, the first thing that's encouraging is that I'm getting to talk with the very best Tennesseans every single day who are not entrenched in kind of that 15% extremism on either side. And so people ask me, Lauren, are you okay? How's it been getting into politics? And I'm having the time of my life because truly, I feel guilty some days that others aren't getting to have the conversations that I'm getting to have. There are the most remarkable neighbors, humans, thinkers, innovators, and I'm getting to talk with them every day. And so first thing I'd say is that, and it's just been so invigorating to get to meet new people across the state who want something different. Nationally, there is such an exciting movement for what we're seeing. There have been wonderful organizations that have been fighting this battle for decades, but they're finally seeing a convergence of resources and a coalescing of ideas. And so they're doing a beautiful job of working together and pooling resources to fund independent campaigns and to really push this idea further that if we're going to have a better union, then it's going to require a very intentional breaking apart of this two-party system, which most people don't know, but even our founding father, George Washington, warned against. He did not want to have a two-party system. So really successful democracies around the world and representative democracies don't have two parties. They have at least three, many of them 5 or 6. And so most of us don't fit, like I said, into one bucket or the other. And so this is just a really needed shift for our country to work.
Do you think, and you really think that an independent is electable? I mean, you think that you can cut through? Because I mean, I'm looking at like James Tallarico. I just love his message, and he feels like an independent to me. I know he's running as a Democrat, probably because, I mean, I know you probably get more funding, right? If you,
Sure.
Yeah. So you're going to get all that support. And which that's why I always like cheer on independents, because they're on their own.
We are on our own. We don't get the support of parties. We also don't get the support of strategists. I mean, I tapped as many strategists as I could from both sides before this campaign launched, and no one was willing to touch my campaign because they thought it would kill their business model if they worked with an independent. And so there's definitely that. I'm definitely starting, building all of my systems from the ground up. I think what it does look like a disadvantage, but we have allowed money to control so much of our politics that it has created lazy candidates who just taking voter lists and just calling down them and asking for loads of money. I think I can do more. I can do 10 times with $1 what another candidate can do. And just it forces us to be very scrappy, very intentional about building relationship networks rather than raising money to run $2 million ads come August after the primaries. And so, it looks like it may look like a disadvantage on the outside, and there are definitely some disadvantages, but what we're building is a movement of people, not a movement of dollars, again, to be dumped into TV ads that you don't want to watch anyways. Yeah. And so it allows us to utilize our resources a lot better. And I would not be running if I thought that it was going to waste people's time and money. I don't like to lose, and I don't like I don't need this office to feel good about myself. Right. And so this really was a moment of calling, but also of responsibility. And I don't intend to run a campaign that's not competitive. We've already out-reported all of the Democratic candidates combined 4-1. So, we're already at least number 2 on the ballot. And I'm making it every effort. I will make it every effort to be number 1.
It's amazing to me how much money people spend on these campaigns. I saw this morning that I'm trying to think, I'm drawing a blank. It's the senator in Tennessee that's running against Republican against Ken Paxton, has spent $70 million on his reelection campaign in Texas. That's like presidential numbers, right? I mean, what the heck?
I know.
How is this happening?
Well, there was a Supreme Court case that should have never been, decided as it was. I don't know if you guys have followed Citizens United in the early 2000s, but that really, the decision around that court case was that corporations are people, and so they should be allowed to invest in political campaigns. And that is where we saw this massive dump of millions of dollars going into super PACs and really driving elections. And so it really does take someone who's not afraid of that money to be even willing to jump in if they're not going to be aligned with a party. But listen, this happens even within parties too. And I think people don't understand. They definitely don't understand that the Democrats and the Republicans only have 27% of the electorate locked in.
Only 27%.
They each have about 27% of the electorate locked in. They don't want you to know that because they don't want you to know that they aren't supreme. And so that leaves, in the last polling from the last quarter, 47% of people who identify as, a swing voter or someone who really doesn't identify strongly as red or blue. And so we'll go back to James Tallarico for a moment. The representative I also respect greatly, and have really appreciated his messaging over the years. And for Texas, this is a big moment. We're recording this the day of their election. So
I know.
Watching very closely to see what happens. But we need to talk about how this money is used, because he had a sure shot. He had a very strong opportunity to win and to beat a Republican in his race because of his message being so moderate. And Democrats have felt for a long time like, they needed a more extreme Democrat to win. Well, what happened on the backside is that money was dumped from the Republican Party online to push Representative Crockett into this race.
I was wondering what happened, because she said she wasn't going to run when he first got in, and then something changed.
Lots of money was dumped into the algorithms to pressure her, whether that was through bots, I'm not sure, but they kind of brought it to the surface and then brought it to her cognition. And then she decided to jump in. And they are both they're two of the strongest candidates that Texas has on the Democratic side. And now they're duking it out in public. And it's such a loss to the party and to the state, because Texas is already dealing with redistricting issues. And that was a purposeful plant on the Republican side. And money was dumped into that. And, I got to hand it to the Republicans on that. I mean, what a brilliant strategy. And that was, in my understanding, what led to this primary being what it is.
Makes sense.
So we see several governors in the news here periodically battling it out at the federal level. And when you consider, to me, it seems like a new sort of phenomenon for this to really be happening at the scale that we see it in places like with, Governor Newsom as an example. So when you picture yourself as a governor in a very divided state and a very divided country, like, what is your posture going into that, expecting some backlash from really high up in the chain?
Yeah. Well, there's two things that I'll share. One is really centered around that humanism. We've got to start to humanize the people that we work with. And currently, when I walk into our state house, I have representatives and senators who don't want to talk with me, don't want to, even engage with me. I had my own representative actually hang up on me when we were in a conversation on the phone, and it's ironic because we go to church together. So, there's just this distaste of and this discomfort of being even in the same room with someone who you assume is thinking differently than you. So if elected to be the 51st governor of Tennessee, the first thing we're doing is we're having a big old potluck, and everybody is coming to the governor's residence, and they are bringing their spouses and their partners and their children. And we are all going to have a big conversation, and we're going to sit with people who are on the opposite side of the aisle, and we're going to start talking. I mean, that has to happen if we're going to bring really effective legislation together. The second thing that we're going to do is deploy a legislative accountability tool out of the governor's office, because if our elected representatives and senators are not listening to their constituents, and they're just doing whatever not just their state party says to do, but the federal party says to do, then this is not a representative democracy. And I don't want to have to start yelling no taxation without representation everywhere I go. So we're going to be instituting this tool. I've been talking with some brilliant people in the democracy preservation space, and basically we will collect feedback from voters verified through their voter ID. And we will be collecting all of this data to make it public source of calls that we're receiving, comment forms that we're receiving on where constituents land on different issues. I will be sending that report to all 33 senators, all 99 representatives every week. It will be their public source again, so that you can see that your information and your wishes are being counted. And then we can assign a score to each elected official of how well their votes align with their constituents. And it's going to take that kind of accountability.
I'm all
Can you
for
imagine
that.
In Tennessee?
I can't imagine, because I don't feel like my voice is being listened to often. When I reach out, it's sort of like, well, thank you for reaching out, but no, we're not doing that. I mean, it's so dismissive. The responses I get from my congressman about issues that, instead of saying, listen, we hear you. We'd love to hear more about why you build, they don't want to continue the conversation at all. They just, yeah, no, that's basically what I get. And it's so frustrating. It just makes you want to give up and not even try to keep reaching out and letting your voice be heard.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And you know what? Actually, our elected officials actually do want this because they are under such a heavy thumb from the state party. And again, that's being handed down from the federal party. The Tennessee GOP, the Republican Party, kicked 16 moderate Republicans off of ballots across the state of Tennessee in our last election. Good, centered candidates on the Republican side because they knew that they couldn't control them. And we're watching this happen again this cycle because many of the candidates, especially down ballot candidates for school board or for sheriff, didn't know that they had to pay the party $50 to be able to receive the party's nomination if they won the primary. And so they've already kicked off hundreds of candidates this cycle who were wanting to serve. And so, really candidates and elected officials are wanting this. It happened in Florida, and the legislature passed a bill asking for the state to fund this tool, and Governor DeSantis vetoed the bill. And so, it's just proof that it actually does help elected officials to stay in office if they want to really serve the people.
I would be remiss if I didn't just point out that you bring some great Enneagram 8 themes into your leadership and style.
What accountability, real conversation,
real conversations. Yeah,
that's
the
awesome.
courage. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I just have to. Oh, go ahead, Stacey.
Oh no, you go first.
Well, I was just, as women of faith, I wonder what your take is on that. It seems like that politics has entered a lot of the churches. Politics is being preached from the pulpit. And how do you see that trickling down? And do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
So it's interesting. I don't know if you guys know this, but I used to be employed through a church when we lived overseas. And so I was working with the underground church in a communist nation, a church that had been imprisoned for their faith. And so the whole idea of, Christian persecution, you can miss me with that in America because it does not align with our lived experience. So I have very strong opinions that are founded in facts,
there you go.
Christian America being persecuted. So that to me is a hard line. The frames that we bring to this conversation are important. And I don't know how much you guys have talked about this on the podcast, but I have a dear friend, Dr. Aaron Wheeler, who we used to work together, but he wrote his dissertation on gospel pathways. And he says that good news has to answer to bad news. And so in order for you to know how you bring the gospel to someone, you have to know what their bad news is. And he kind of lays out different gospel pathways that people might need. But he says and we've talked a lot about this, he and I, around the white church in America is so punitive in nature, where we are sinners. And so therefore we need a savior. I have sinned, so I need someone to save me from my sins. And that is really the theme that emerges in white churches. And it is very tied to, I'm never going to be good enough on my own, so I have to just do everything just right. And if that is the mindset that you are using in your faith, it also informs the way that you think about everything else. And politics is included in that. And so my duty is to be a good person and to vote the right way. And that means that I'm going to vote as a Republican, because otherwise I am basically aborting a child, and so that has been so central to the way that we think. Now, I had the chance to worship in a Kojic church on Sunday in Memphis, so a Church of God in Christ, and it was a beautiful, incredible celebration of faith. And the Black churches that I have been a part of and have worshiped with have a very different frame, based in liberation theology of, I have been oppressed, but a better day is coming. And it is this moment of celebration because no one can tell me what to do with my body or how to live, because in this moment we are living in our fullness and we are living out loud, and God is coming, and we have a greater day to look towards. Now, the irony here is that people think that Black voters are going to vote Democratic and white voters are going to vote Republican. And again, there are just issues that there are very conservative values in the Black church that don't align with everything in the Democratic Party.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who love their immigrant neighbors in white churches, and that does not align with the Republican Party. And so, the messages that come through our churches, it's the same in mosques, it's the same in temples, it's the same in different institutions of faith, that people are tired of being put into boxes again, that are like, well, I'm an immigrant, so I have to vote as a Democrat, or I'm a white male, so I have to vote for the economy. We're not these people. And probably I'm going on a lot of tangents and rants here, but one quote that sticks out to me, and as I think about voters that I've spoken with over the last few months, is a woman who said, Lauren, I'm so excited to be able to vote for someone who allows me to be a whole person. She said, I came to California, I'm a homeschooling mom, and people automatically assume what my political beliefs are because of that. And voting for you means that I get to be layered in who I am as a person, and that no one gets to own my political beliefs. And that has stuck with me a lot.
Oh, amen, sister. I love that. I think you nailed it so much. I mean, I think there's a fear-based and guilt messaging coming that makes people feel like that they have to be in this box, or it's going to affect their relationship with God somehow.
Yes, it's a pervasive message that's been very effective for many years.
Yeah, but you're giving people permission to break out of those boxes. It's like an Enneagram. You can break out of your box.
You can grow. You can expand your thinking, and your brain and your heart can be aligned. And I think that's what most people are looking for right now. And especially, and I'll share this specifically for people who have a Republican background. I have watched so many people struggle so hard to defend their vote for a certain man in office, and it has been difficult, and it continues to be difficult. And so, with a campaign like this, I'm saying there is some moral superiority that you're welcomed into, and you are not going to I'm not going to point my finger at you. I'm not going to shame you, but I am going to give you an off-ramp to a space that has failed to allow you to connect your head and your heart and your faith and your actions. So there is a better way. And at least for this election, you can step off the platform.
Mic drop.
Yep.
Lauren, what have we not asked you that you want to make sure people hear today?
Well, we are an independent campaign, which means that it's going to take everybody getting involved. And so whether that's with your time and volunteering, if that is with your talents, like the things that you can bring and work on our strategy, I'm going to say your treasure as well, because every dollar that we raise sends a message, and it sends a message of viability, and it sends a message to the rest of the nation that we have a story to tell here in Tennessee, and people in Tennessee are ready to rise to this moment, do what many people from Tennessee have done in the past, our leaders in the civil rights movement, the suffragettes who really used Tennessee to turn the tide and codify women's rights to vote for the entire nation. These incredible people like Ida B. Wells, who is from Tennessee, who said that we have to speak what we have seen. And that is what I am expecting of Tennesseans this year, is to send a national message that we are the people equipped and ready to do this. And so there's lots of ways to get involved, and I would welcome anyone, even from out of state, to get involved. You are, if you align with this message, then we want to have you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lauren Pinkston. I think you're a breath of fresh air, and I think we need more of people like you in politics. And like we mentioned, James Tallarico, I'm kind of rooting for him, because I feel like he has that same quality, that same thing. He's trying to bring humanity back into it, instead of being so divisive and so dehumanizing towards the other. And I'm all about that. So thank you so much for, like I said at the beginning, being brave and bold and saying, Tennessee needs this, and I'm going to try to meet that need. I'm just going to step up. And so Thanks so much.
There are too many people just like us. There are too many people just like me who want to do that and want to step into something good. And so everyone deserves to be represented. So it's a fun party over here. It's a different kind of
good.
And so
we're going to put links in the show notes to your website, to all of your social media, and we just encourage everybody to reach out to Lauren. And I just messaged her and she messaged me right back. And I know that she has people that'll get back with you, and she really does want to hear from you guys. And so y'all connect with Lauren, and let's make Tennessee a better place together.
That's great. Marcia, Stacey, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for having these important conversations.
Well, we're all about it, and we're just so thrilled you came to join us. Thanks to everyone for listening today. Y'all check out Lauren's campaign. Let's do what we can to change the world together. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks on the Fresh Start Podcast. Bye. This episode has been brought to you by God and My Girlfriends Ministries. If you're looking for a faith-based community where everyone is accepted, all beliefs are welcome, and no judgment, check out godandmygirlfriendsministries.org, where you can find more information about our book clubs, both online and in person, upcoming retreats, and all the events in your area. You can also find out about one of our favorite things that we do, our Single Moms Christmas Blessing Ministry. So go check out godandmygirlfriendsministries.org. We would love to have you a part of our community.